Few people know that behind every goal, every victory, and every tear of Cristiano Ronaldo, there is something far stronger than training, discipline, or talent: his faith. Since childhood, when he played barefoot on the streets of Madeira, he believed that God had a greater purpose for his life. That belief became his fuel, the inner voice that pushed him to get up after every defeat, even when the world doubted him. While many saw only the athlete, few realized that behind that determined gaze was a man who prayed before every match, asking for strength and humility to honor the gift he believed he had received from the Creator. Looking at this simple principle, the conviction that his ability came from something greater, we begin to understand how every daily gesture of Cristiano gained meaning. Faith was not a social label or an occasional act. It was a habit formed in childhood, repeated through small actions: a silent prayer upon waking, gratitude before meals, the touch of a crucifix as a sign of acknowledgement for the gift received. These gestures, repeated thousands of times, built an emotional foundation strong enough to sustain both triumphant victories and crushing defeats. To those on the outside, it might seem symbolic. To him, it was confirmation that talent had to be honored and directed with purpose. That conviction turned exhausting training sessions into prayers for excellence, personal sacrifices into offerings of service, not just to rise in his career, but to live as an example of what he believed in. In Cristiano's mind, faith also functioned as a moral compass, guiding his choices. When the media pressured him, when rumors spread, when contracts and medical decisions tested his patience, his first response came from an inner place where spiritual trust and hope mattered more than frustration. That perspective allowed him to receive criticism without losing himself, accept praise without feeding vanity, and face pressure as a chance to show resilience. Faith gave voice to his determination. When he said he would train until exhaustion, it was not only ambition, it was a sense of duty he felt as a calling. Every morning of training was therefore a sacred discipline, not out of formality, but out of meaning. More than a set of private rituals, this relationship with God shaped how Cristiano saw his place in the world. Instead of living as someone collecting trophies for himself, he began to understand his career as a stage to inspire, to open doors for young players, and to turn success into help for those in need. The generosity that appears publicly in gestures and donations has its roots in that understanding. Talent is a gift, and responsibility means making it useful. The deep conviction that blessings demand return made his victories acts of gratitude, and his losses lessons that prepared him for the next steps. This ethical logic grew into a virtuous circle. The more he honored the gift, the more meaning he found in the effort. And the more meaning he found, the easier it became to persist even when physical and emotional exhaustion seemed overwhelming. Within that frame, prayer ceased to be a request and became an ongoing conversation. It was not about asking for new boots or better contracts. It was about asking for wisdom to decide, humility to accept limitations, and courage to pursue excellence without losing his personal life. Faith became his counselor in moments of doubt. When facing injuries, transfers, and pressure for impossible results, there was always a reference point helping him stay focused on what truly mattered. That inner discipline quieted the external noise, malicious comments, inflated expectations, destructive criticism, and turned every challenge into an opportunity to reaffirm a conviction that well-guided effort and trust in God produce not only technical results, but also character. The public expressions of his spirituality were never a spectacle. They were subtle and full of meaning. A humble gesture after scoring, a word of thanks, a moment of silence before stepping onto the pitch, all conveyed a simple message. His career was both a gift and a responsibility. For many fans, these signs humanized a figure often treated like a goal-scoring machine. For young people watching him, they became practical lessons on how faith can coexist with ambition and professionalism. Seeing an athlete who refuses to stop praying, who acknowledges a greater source of strength, drew many people closer, even those who might never attend church but identified with the search for meaning and perseverance. And as with any path of faith, it was not free of trials. Moments of frustration, defeat, and pressure had the power to shake even the strongest believers. Yet it was precisely then that faith became his tool for recovery, turning questions into action and frustration into renewed discipline. Instead of giving in to despair, his inner logic imposed routine, patience, and trust, creating a margin of serenity that shielded him from emotional collapse and kept him focused on building the next chapter. With this spiritual arsenal, Cristiano learned to accept that true success is accumulated day by day, through small choices that make the difference when the spotlight shines. All of this was part of an intimate map that guided both his professional and personal life. Faith was not limited to visible rituals. It lived in the priorities that defined his relationships and how he organized his time between family, training, and rest, and in how he chose to give back what he believed he had received. This way of living created a quiet coherence that became a decisive factor in building a career many call legendary, and that, over the years, would be put to the test.
And that memory became a daily practice that guided concrete choices throughout his career. When people said fame could change him, he answered with silence and discipline. When they called him arrogant, he replied with hard work and gratitude. Because for Cristiano, the answer never came in loud words, but in actions that confirmed a life guided by a higher purpose. That attitude made even simple decisions, accepting an offer, changing clubs, prioritizing recovery from an injury, or spending less time at social events, come from an inner compass rooted in faith. Instead of yielding to the immediacy of headlines or the easy shine of lucrative contracts, he sought to understand whether each step honored what he believed in and allowed him to keep his family and principles at the center of his life. Private devotion, repeated in small rituals, became public discipline, methodical training, strict nutrition, planned rest, and psychological focus equal to the physical. He prayed silently before stepping onto the field. He raised his head in gratitude after scoring. He touched the crucifix as one reaffirms a promise. Gestures that, to many, seemed symbolic, but to him were life contracts. In those choices, faith worked as a moral filter that reduced impulsive decisions and made his reactions under pressure predictable. When an injury kept him off the pitch, recovery wasn't just a medical process, it was a spiritual discipline. Patience, routine, and renewed trust in providence. During club transfers, the underlying question was no longer just, "How much will I earn?" but "How will this allow me to keep being a father, a son, and an example?" That perspective brought him peace in moments when others lost direction. Faith also shaped how he related to the public and his teammates. Instead of isolating himself behind success, he learned to listen, to encourage young talents, and to take responsibility in the locker room. The respect he earned didn't come only from statistics, but from consistency between words and actions. Those who saw a player thanking God while also sharing training, knowledge, and opportunities recognized the leader who wasn't seeking individual glory, but collective achievement. That leadership was often silent, a timely piece of advice, an encouraging gesture during training, discreet financial help for someone in need. And that's what made it powerful. It wasn't publicity, it was practice. On a personal level, faith guided his deepest priorities. Choices about family time, decisions about his children's education, moments of retreat for reflection and prayer, all were planned with the same seriousness as a sports season. On long trips, his schedule included intimate moments of gratitude. At the end of each season, celebrations were paired with donations and projects that gave back part of what his career had provided. This integration between belief and action reshaped his public image, no longer just that of a perfect athlete, but of a man who recognizes his flaws, seeks to make amends when he errs, and works to leave a legacy that surpasses records. When facing criticism and controversy, that posture didn't erase conflicts, but offered paths toward reconciliation. Instead of reacting aggressively, he chose to learn, adjust, and, when necessary, apologize and repair. His relationship with faith turned frustrations into engines for improvement, defeat into lessons, and victory into instruments of gratitude. By making choices grounded in a higher purpose, he began using his influence for concrete causes, supporting children, investing in health and education, and building partnerships that reflected his desire to turn success into opportunity for others. This consolidated a powerful narrative among fans and young athletes alike, that of someone who doesn't see his career merely as a collection of trophies, but as a platform to make a difference. And while the world debated numbers and contracts, beneath that surface lay a coherence that was quietly preparing the way for even greater decisions, ones that would define not only seasons, but a legacy.
And that coherence between belief and action, built over years of sacrifice, work, and silence, is what today reveals the true secret of Cristiano Ronaldo. When we look at his journey as a whole, it becomes clear that what kept him at the top was not only his physical strength or extraordinary talent, but the spiritual force that had accompanied him since childhood and matured alongside him. Every extra training session, every goal scored in the final minutes, every comeback after a fall was driven by one conviction, that his life had a purpose beyond football. That conviction shaped a mindset that protected him from arrogance and discouragement, a Christian mindset that taught him to look up even when the world looked down. Faith gave him the emotional structure to bear the weight of expectations, to respond to pressure without losing himself, and to remember that before being an idol, he was a man, a son, and a servant. The greatness the world sees in stadiums is the reflection of invisible work that begins within him, in the awareness that discipline is also a form of prayer, and that total dedication is a way to praise the Creator. Over the years, what began as a boy's belief became a philosophy of life. Cristiano learned that being an example is not about being perfect, but about being consistent, and that faith does not remove pain, but gives it meaning. In every painful defeat, he found a lesson. In every unfair criticism, a chance to grow. And in every victory, a reason to give thanks. That's how he turned challenges into stepping stones, and criticism into fuel. Faith taught him that glory is temporary, but character endures. And that's why, even at the peak of success, he kept his feet on the ground and his eyes on God. To those looking from the outside, his strength might seem to come from his body, diet, or training routine. But those who know his story understand that true strength comes from the soul. It's what keeps him going when his body asks for rest. It's what lifts him when wounded pride threatens to lead him astray. It's what makes him look to the sky after a goal, as if to say, "Thank you." The secret to his greatness lies in that loyalty to his principles, even when it would be easier to abandon them. In football, a world of constant lights and temptations, maintaining coherence is an act of courage and faith. Cristiano showed that it is possible to succeed without losing oneself, to be competitive without being inhuman, to live surrounded by applause without letting the noise drown out the inner voice. His Christian mindset is the root of that quiet strength that allows him to surpass limits. Faith taught him that talent is a gift, and every gift brings responsibility, that each victory is a blessing, and every blessing must be shared. That success only has value when it inspires others to believe as well. And that's why for millions he has become a symbol of persistence, hope, and grace. Not because he never failed, but because he never gave up. Ultimately, Cristiano Ronaldo's legacy goes far beyond goals scored or trophies lifted. It lies in the message he conveys without speaking, that it is possible to achieve the impossible when one has faith. His life is proof that excellence and spirituality are not enemies, that faith can be the greatest competitive strength of a human being. He proved that one doesn't need to choose between being the best and being faithful, because true victory lies in remaining upright when arrogance is expected, in being humble when exhibition is rewarded, in being grateful when others seek recognition. His example stands as living proof that faith does not confine. On the contrary, it expands, strengthens, and guides. Today, looking back, Cristiano can see that the journey that began on the streets of Madeira with a boy dreaming and praying in silence has become a global testimony. He no longer represents only football, but a philosophy of life built on perseverance and trust in God. Every young person who looks up to him learns that training the body is not enough. One must also nurture the spirit. And every person facing hardship finds in his story the proof that faith does not remove obstacles, it teaches you how to climb them. That's why the name Cristiano Ronaldo has become eternal, not only in the records, but in the way he inspires. He has shown that the true champion is the one who, even surrounded by glory, still kneels in gratitude. And perhaps that is the secret the whole world tries to decipher. The beautiful victory is to remain faithful to God when you have every reason to turn away from Him.